Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, July the 5th, a continuation of some very warm and humid conditions in the mid-Atlantic region and indeed throughout much of the eastern half of the nation. An unsettled weather pattern continues really right into next week. Today actually may offer the lowest chance of some rainfall in the, let's say, the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. However, it will not be non-zero. There can be some isolated to scattered afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms, but not nearly as widespread as it has been in the past few days, and as it very likely will be over the next several days. It looks like starting later on tomorrow, we get right back into that unsettled weather pattern, and it certainly continues this weekend and into the first half of next week. I thought we'd kind of step back and take a kind of a big picture look here, since there's nothing real dramatic going on right now in the weather. So we'll take a look at the tropics. We'll even take a look at the Arctic situation and the latest on the sun. This is the map from University of Wisconsin, CIMSS tropical website. Very good website. And this is very interesting here, actually, the fact that there are no active tropical storms anywhere around the world. Here we are, July 5th. It's still early in the season for sure in the Atlantic basin, but it's kind of surprising that no activity right now, not only in the Atlantic, but in the Pacific as well. Well, let's take a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies here across the world, and two things certainly jump out at you. El Nino is continuing to intensify across the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean, right here off the west coast of South America, and now kind of expanding to the west along that latitude line of 0 degrees, the equator here. And this will continue to be a big player throughout the tropical season over the summer. It looks like it'll certainly continue the El Nino in the fall and perhaps even into the upcoming winter season as well. Meanwhile, a lot of warm water off the west coast of Africa. That should be kind of a favorable situation for Atlantic Basin tropical activity. However, El Nino is the opposite. It's more produces more unfavorable conditions due to increased wind shear across the Atlantic Basin. So kind of a contradictory signals there. Meanwhile, some warmer than normal waters also off the southeast coast of the U.S., across the Caribbean Sea and into the Gulf of Mexico. Meanwhile, the northern Pacific, kind of interesting. We have a batch of colder than normal water off the west coast of the U.S., and then above that, a blob of warmer than normal water across the northern Pacific. So kind of a tripolar situation going on here with warm, cold, and warm across the Pacific Ocean. Certainly we'll continue to monitor the sea surface temperature anomalies over the next several weeks. Well, let's now take a jump from the tropics to the Arctic. Don't often show this map, but I'll actually be doing a posting tomorrow on the Arctic situation, both in terms of temperatures and in terms of sea ice extent and volume. Kind of interesting what's going on in the Arctic region. What we're looking at here is a daily mean temperature. This is the beginning of the year right here, and it updates this on a daily basis. And right now we're right in this region right here. And the blue represents kind of the climatological mean in the Arctic region. This is 80 degrees and north, and it's certainly an area of interest to monitor here. And the temperature pattern this particular year mimics temperature pattern that we've seen over the last couple of decades. A very persistent situation here in terms of the Arctic mean temperatures. This data, by the way, from the Danish Meteorological Institute. Typically, for the past couple of decades, we've had a lot of warmer than normal conditions during the cold season, really the cold 9 months. Anything but June, July, and August. It's typically been above normal temperatures. Now, above normal temperatures in the cold season in the Arctic is way below the freezing mark. So the summer season, on the other hand, has been very close to normal, nearly normal conditions, as it is right now, moving into the early part of July, almost exactly where it is in terms of a climatological mean. So nearly normal summertime temperatures are quite important because the summertime is the melting season in the Arctic region. You can see here this is the freezing line here, 0 degrees Celsius right here. So temperatures are only slightly above the freezing mark in the summer on a climatological basis. So if they stay nearly normal, that's going to inhibit the chances for any significant drop-off in Arctic sea ice during the summertime. And again, this has been a very persistent pattern with nearly normal temperatures in the summertime and above normal confined to the other 9 months of the year when temperatures are way below the freezing mark. Now, what can explain that? One of the explanations certainly can be water vapor. There's been certainly an increase in water vapor in general over the past couple of decades, with the warmer than normal oceans. For example, the northern Atlantic Ocean, which certainly has an impact on the Arctic temperatures and the Arctic sea ice situation, has generally been in a positive phase, what we call the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, a positive AMO, since pretty much the mid-1990s. And the fact that the oceans have been warmer than normal over the past couple of decades means there's more evaporation in the oceans, and that releases water vapor into the atmosphere. So water vapor has certainly been increased in the atmosphere throughout the world over the past couple of decades. And when you increase water vapor to the atmosphere, it has a much bigger impact on temperatures when it's in areas where it's very cold and very dry. And that is exactly what we experience in the Arctic. Very cold, very dry conditions throughout the cold season. And again, the cold season really is the non-summer season in the Arctic region. So in other words, an increase in water vapor throughout the world, especially up in the Arctic, can very well be could very well be a big player in the above normal temperatures in the cold season in the Arctic when it's very cold and dry. That impact by the increase in water vapor is much, much less likely, much lower during the summertime when it's typically a little bit warmer, maybe a little bit more humid. So again, this kind of a very persistent pattern can be explained perhaps with the additional water vapor that's in the atmosphere. This is 2023. Let's just go back a couple different times here. We'll take a look. This, for example, going back to 2015, and again, very similar pattern here. Above normal in the non-summer season, nearly normal, just slightly above that freezing mark during the summer season. We'll go back all the way to 2005. Again, very similar pattern, a lot of above normal conditions in the cold 9 months of the year, but nearly normal in the Arctic region during that all-important melting season. And again, as long as we stay nearly normal in that summer season, the Arctic sea ice will likely not significantly drop off, and it's actually shown some resiliency over the past decade or so. And again, I'll have a posting on that at the arcfieldweather.com website on Thursday. Well, let's wrap up. We went first of all into the tropical situation, then to the Arctic. Now let's take a quick peek at the sun. It's been very active on the sun over the past several days, and really several weeks here. We're ramping up in solar cycle 25, and a couple of days ago, the sunspot number reached a high level of 126. It's dropped off a little bit in the past couple of days, but that 126 actually marked the highest sunspot total since 2002. Quite an active time period on the sun right now. Again, solar cycle 25 is ramping up to a solar maximum phase. Earlier, it had appeared as if the maximum phase would be reached maybe sometime later in 2025. There's some reason to believe that it could actually reach a peak earlier than that, maybe even 2024. Something that is not all that precisely predicted with our technology today, the solar minimum, solar maximum timing. But again, been quite active. Some of the highest sunspot totals since 2002, for example. Just a couple of days ago, we see several different sunspots right now rotating around on the sun, and most of them are facing the Earth right now. So if there's any coronal mass ejection from these sunspots over the next 24 to 48 hours or so, it certainly can have an impact on the Earth's upper atmosphere with northern lights, for example. But again, we'll monitor this over the next several months here, but the feeling is starting to change in terms of when that solar maximum for current solar cycle 25 actually is reached. Again, earlier thinking was sometime later in 2025, but it could be pulled back into as early as late this year, but more than likely 2024. We'll continue to monitor the sun situation here at arcfieldweather.com. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.